Despite all of this, the Dow and the S&P 500 coming off of their best month since January 1987. Joining us right now is Teton Capital Chairman and CEO David Sokol. David, it's great to have you this morning. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning, Maria. Glad to be here.
Let me kick it off with the state of play, where we are at. You've obviously been a student of business for a long time. Well, how do you see the reopening of the country with half of states now trying to do just that this weekend? What do you want to see in terms of a reopening?
Well, I think it's essential that we do reopen, and obviously we need to, protect those that are most vulnerable to this virus, protect the elderly. But the rest of us need to get back to business. And if we don't get back to business, we've already seen the depth of what shutting our economy down, or a portion of our economy for 6 weeks can do. Any further delay in reopening, I think, will hurt the most vulnerable in our society by far the worst. And I would say, by the way, it's a tribute to the incredible first responders, not only the EMTs and the ambulance operators, the police, and the firemen, but the nurses and doctors and the response they've taken to this. And given a lot of the confusion, I think we owe them an enormous debt of gratitude. But we've got to get the economy restarted.
Yeah, and in terms of you being the chairman of Atlas, speak to the involvement in the global container shipping business and what you're seeing there. When would you expect that business to sort of return to normal?
It took a very serious downturn in the first quarter as China had to obviously regroup. And then as the virus spread to Europe and the U.S., you've seen the market for container shipping, for international trade, continue to reduce. We are seeing a flattening occur, and as the economies of both the United States or North America and Europe reopen, we think the second quarter for shipping looks like it will be the most difficult, and then begin to rebound as people need to restock shelves and things throughout the world.
Okay, let's move on to the letter that you and a group of CEOs are sending to Larry Fink discussing environmental, societal, and governance issues. It's interesting, the responsibility of the corporation today has been really become front page for a number of CEOs, talking about stakeholders versus shareholders. So this letter to the CEO of BlackRock says this: the effective and profitable deployment of capital in our current regulatory environment is difficult enough. Adding another layer of risk to that decision-making process, thereby penalizing companies that are already going above and beyond, would be costly, destructive, and frankly unfair. David, tell us more about this letter and why you see it as important.
Well, I think, Maria, we have to start with the fact that for the last 240 years, America's capitalistic, freedom-based society with a representative republic form of government has allowed the United States to lead the world in the standard of living, in charitable giving, in racial and gender equality, and religious freedom. So the United States it can always strive and should always strive to be better, but we should not ignore our nation's uniqueness, which has been derived from these founding principles, which the core of which is a rule of law, and a predictable rule of law. We've recently gone to where we want to ignore law and begin to use phrases that most of us, if you just listen to the phrase, can agree with, like shareholder returns being moved to stakeholder returns, or things like a Green New Deal, whatever that is. But the problem with those words are they're not law. And we haven't gone through the legislative process to determine how they will affect corporations and the American economy and the global economy. We just want to infuse someone's personal views. The problem with a term like stakeholder return is I don't know what it means. To me, to properly run your company and to maximize shareholder returns, you have to take care of your stakeholders. But every company's stakeholders are different. They have different requirements, different needs, and they're subject to different laws and regulations. By changing the fundamental premise of what a corporation is out there to do, which is to make a return for its investors, to something nebulous that can be interpreted outside of common sense, or just someone else's views, is very dangerous. And an example would be the oil industry. You have these groups today deciding that under their environmental, social, and governance standards that they want to stop banks, they won't invest in banks if they will loan money to an Exxon or a Chevron. Well, energy is essential to our economy. Enron and Chevron obey the laws. They deal with the rules and regulations. And for people to use other people's money through pension funds and things of that nature to try to harm other corporations, I think it's just inappropriate and, frankly, a breach of fiduciary obligation to their investors.
Yeah, and I know you're sending it to BlackRock because they are the largest, they have the largest assets under management. We're talking about $7 trillion. Larry Fink, the CEO, has said, look, we're not going to invest in companies that we don't agree with, for example, the oil companies. So this is why you're sending the letter. Have you heard back at all? Because this is not the first time you brought this up. Real quick, we got to jump.
We have not, and we hope that people pay attention to the fact that words matter, but laws matter more, and that we need to retain our ability to be governed by rules of law.
All right, we will leave it there. David, great to have you this morning. Thanks very much. We'll keep watching this important subject. David Sokol joining us.